Like if you're sitting around waiting for like, whew, I want to make these changes, but it's going to happen when this, and this happens. Like you're never going to get to that point. At a certain point, you just have to be like, screw it, let's just try. And if it doesn't work out, well, then we'll pivot.
Hey everyone, I'm Kyle Lacey, and this is Carrying Fire, a podcast about the people who saw change coming, chose to learn instead of stall, and found a way to stay in the game. Real stories, honest conversations, and absolutely no hype. This is 100% a no hype zone. Well, before we get into the meat of it, could you give an introduction for both of you? I don't care who goes first, and give us a little bit of background on Second Harvest in particular.
All right, I'll get things started. So I'm Devon McDonald. Kyle, you and I have known each other for many, many years now, dating back to OpenView Venture Partners.
11 years.
11 years, holy moly. So I have been in venture capital since 2009 with OpenView. Had a great run there, building out our expansion platform, working with our portfolio companies to help with all things growth and talent. And in recent years, I have started Second Harvest with Richard. This came about just coming from a place of being at a point in my life where I was ready for change. I've been doing something for many, many years. We had a lot of success, but knew deep down inside that there was a misalignment, and it was scary as hell, but it was time to make those changes. So Richard came into my life around that same time and was so helpful to me in that way. And through that, we decided to come up with Second Harvest, which we're now offering to other people so that they can, when they're going through these big, scary changes, that they feel like they've got the space to do just that and have the right conversations with the right people. But I'll let him take it from there.
The connective tissue is OpenView, because that's where I met both of you.
That's true. That is very true.
Yeah, exactly. But Devon and I hadn't seen each other for, I don't know, many, many, many years. And we bumped into each other. She was going through all the changes she was going through. I had some changes thrust upon me. My wife had died of cancer. The business that we were running together had been shut down because of the pandemic. It was one of these businesses where it was a co-working business, so you just couldn't have people there. And my life was turned upside down, and suddenly I was in this massive transformational stage of my life, which I didn't have a plan for. I didn't know what the hell to do. And the thing that really impacted me the most positively was my friends showed up for me, and they said, we're going to rent this Airbnb, we're going to take you away, and we're just going to let you grieve in the best possible way, which is to spend time with us around the dinner table, around the fireplace, on the bike, hiking in the Marin headlands in California. And that was when Devon and I got together. We started saying, how do people manage their transformational process? How do they go from, say, a big career change, or being an empty nester, or dealing with grief or divorce or whatever the thing is in their life, when it's not necessarily appropriate for a therapist or for a coach? So there's a lot of modalities for change, and a lot of them are established. But most of us actually just want to be with people who give a shit about us, who care about us, who are also going through the same thing, and have that peer wisdom that they can share in a non-guru led environment. In other words, there's no person saying, this is the way, this is the framework, this is my solution, you should do this.
No DMT.
I mean, that could be the thing. We're not saying those things are not good. What we're saying is there's nobody telling you how to live your life. And especially as you transition to the second half of your life, you just don't think about that because there's no school to solve that problem. So we thought, well, what if we just put something together? Devon then announced it on LinkedIn. She said, we're going to go to Austria. We found this beautiful retreat at the top of the mountain. Who wants to be there? And 2 weeks later, we were sold out, and a bunch of strangers were all heading.
How many people showed up? How many people?
There were 18 of us total. And it was kind of wild because I don't think we had any idea what we were doing. Certainly we had run retreats, but mostly in the corporate sense, like offsites, that kind of stuff. And because we weren't showing up as gurus, because we weren't saying we have the answers, there was no pressure on us. We were just saying, we're going to create the container, physical, emotional, spiritual container for you to show up and be vulnerable. And the most incredible people showed up. A guy who had been CEO of Red Bull, who had turned his attention to becoming a Buddhist monk, a woman who was running $1 billion hedge fund, who had just gone through a world of pain, personal pain. I mean, just in massive list of people who were significant and successful in their own right, but were at that turning point and saying, like, I don't know what's next for me. I don't know where the meaning is going to come from. And so by creating that container, we accidentally found this thing. And then we did some research and we found out that 84 million people are going to go through midlife in the next, say, 15 years. That's just in the US. And so there's this wave of people that are showing up and going, where do I go for that conversation? So here we are.
We'll come back to Second Harvest because I just finished the book Second Mountain by David Brooks, which is very similar. The reality is that those are the only two things that I've heard of recently to help anybody trying to go through this type of misalignment. But I want to go back to Devon. You mentioned the word misalignment, and I think a lot of people feel it a lot all the time. I think it's depending on the situation. It could be, I don't feel like I'm keeping up with tech. It could be family stuff, could be the misalignment between meaning and life and work. The feeling of misalignment, how did that manifest itself?
Well, how did it manifest itself was, for me physically, it was starting to creep out. And it was creeping out in the sense of different ailments. My jaw became so locked that I swear to God, I had to cut my food into basically like credit card swipes to get the, cutting that cheeseburger into the credit card swipes. That was fun. But it was so locked. My skin was breaking out. I was getting migraines. I had gained weight. Like, I was a college athlete, so I'd always been in shape. Had 3 babies, so yes, there's that little trauma on the body there. But around the time, I would say, of the pandemic, and I think the pandemic is an interesting turning point, and I know I'm not alone in this. Like, this was an opportunity where the light was just shined on everyone's lives and relationships and working situations, and you had a lot of time for the first time to just kind of sit there with the life that you had built for yourself and start questioning, is this really it? Like, is this what I want to keep doing? And so, I gained a bunch of weight. And I just was not happy with myself. And so one of the first things, honestly, was it felt misaligned. I was trying to pretend like everything was picture perfect. I got the great job, got the great house in the burbs. Newton, I know you lived in
Newton.
for
I
a
love
while.
Newton.
Everything was good. And I was like, okay, but it doesn't feel right. But I feel guilty about that because I'm like, but this is crazy. Like, I've worked so hard and I'm so grateful. I'm so fortunate. So like, why am I feeling this way? But that almost created even more stress. So first things first for me was, okay, I didn't know, I know I needed change, but I didn't know exactly how to make those changes or what the alternatives would be yet. So I wanted to start with getting healthy physically because I knew I could do that. I knew like how I was carrying myself was just like I could be better. So started working out, started eating right, started doing those things. And then as I was starting to invest in myself more and more, it changed my energy levels. It changed my confidence levels. If you're spiritual, I feel like it changed my aura maybe. And then with that, it just more opportunities started to come my way. Things started to make a bit more sense. Having those hard conversations became a little bit easier. And then began just a series of making some pretty difficult choices and changes in my life.
So it manifested itself physically. I'm going to present the question to you too, Richard. It's a very different, I guess it's not different, but the misalignment happened a little bit differently for you. But like, how did it manifest itself?
Well, all of those things were present in my life as well, but they were mostly present in the relationships that I was having. Dis-ease of misalignment. As Devon said, your body keeps score, but it also keeps score in all of the relationships that you have around you. Being a witness to my wife's cancer was part of that journey. In fact, a lot of the real insights that I gained were from the nurses, the palliative care nurses, the hospice nurses, who they lived with death. That was their job. Their job was to help people die with grace and with dignity. And I hadn't really given that a lot of thought. And so for me, the misalignment was here I was living as if I had forever, as if I had more time, as if there was just an infinite amount of resources available. What I suddenly realized is that, oh my God, I got less time than I think. I've got so much more mortality to consider. Chrissy was 39 when she died. My best friend's wife died 4 or 5 months later. She was 37. Our neighbor, who's my son's best friend's father, died at 37, all within the space of I think it was 7 or 8 months. And those relationships were like mirrors. They were reflecting on your choices. They're reflecting on how much time you invest in work versus family or friends, how much time you worry and have this concern about things that you have no control over, how much of your energy is in being invested in the wrong things. As Devon said, you look around and you go, oh, I've got the great house and the great car and the life, but it doesn't feel like it's very rewarding. And those relationships are reflections of that as well. So for me, the misalignment was seeing how others were experiencing life and realizing that I was not aligned with who I truly needed to be. And I was high on this idea that I just needed to be a CEO. I just needed to be successful. I just needed the great car and the house and everything. And none of those things were rewarding. None of those things felt like me. It just felt like other people's stories.
So both of you had this feeling of misalignment, different circumstances, but the difference between, at least from what I can view outside looking in, since I haven't talked to either of you in a decade, other than online, right? From outside looking in, it feels like you had the ability to see the misalignment, to act on it, and you're growing because of it. There's people that don't do that. There's people that know there's misalignment and they won't change. They won't, but for a variety of reasons, right? Could be fear, could be the inability, all this stuff. How did you do it? How did you see it? And then how did you evolve into change? Because I think that's the hardest part. Like, you can look at a problem and be like, yeah, that's my problem. I need to go change it. But the reality is that you got to go do it, right? And you did. And I'm sure it's an evolving thing. We're constantly changing every day, of course, as humans. But how did each of you do it? I don't care which one goes first. You could talk together. It doesn't matter. But how did you change it?
It started just with the awareness that something was off. And like I said before, like, I didn't know exactly what I wanted the alternative to be, but I knew something needed to change. So it was a matter of kind of like starting to take steps forward and vocalize what was happening to me and know that it was okay to not have all the answers, but that I needed to start at least like putting myself out there a bit and learning more about myself and having conversations. And also, like, going back to that point I made earlier about just like, I knew physically that I was not in shape and I knew what it meant to be in shape. So for me, it was easier to start there.
Yeah, you could visualize it.
Because I could visualize it and I had some like steps in place. And then it's something about just like that forward momentum that then can help you unlock the confidence in the next change that you need to make, if that makes sense.
We borrowed this term from a guy called Rich Roll. He's an author and podcaster. You may have run across him. Mood follows action. So we use this as personally and also within the retreat context as a way to remind people that if they're waiting for inspiration or motivation before they take action or as a prelude to action, they could be waiting for a very long time. The action itself, doing whatever feels most natural to you. In Devon's case, she knew what it felt like to be an athlete. She stepped into being fit again, being healthy again. That precipitated other changes. For me, it was quite similar, but I also chose not only that physical embodiment in terms of exercise, but I actually started painting again, started creating again, started writing again, doing the things that I had put aside and ignored because you're busy, because you're raising a family, because you're getting on with things, turning my attention back to the things that nourished me and were a creative fountainhead. That action, just taking out a paintbrush and starting to paint or starting to write something, precipitated action, or change in mood, I should say. So the action led to a mood change. And then I was more motivated. Then I was more excited about what I needed to have the energy for.
Well, this is interesting because it sounds like you both picked something that you had a comfort level with. There was some comfort. But when a lot of people talk about change, they talk about being uncomfortable. You got to be uncomfortable. You got to, that's the only way to have change happen. And I think it's interesting that you sought out something that you already knew would help. And then it probably evolved to the uncomfortable change. But you had to take that one step to say, here's something that I've done in the past, which I know will help, right? Like for me, it's the same as Devon and both of you. Like it's the working out part of it that was always what I went to if I needed to change something first. Is that how it evolved? Because I still, you can't have a bunch of comfort, right, as you're changing, because that's not real change in my opinion. But I'm assuming that you had some uncomfortable things happen then that.
I would say it created that wedge. Yeah. For larger, more uncomfortable things to sort of transpire thereafter.
Devin, you said confidence, which I think is super important because I think a lot of times when people don't change, whether it's like looking at Claude code, trying to figure out what the hell they're looking at, or it's trying to change something in their personal life, or it's becoming better at what you do, they usually don't change because of the confidence or a lack of confidence.
I think it's like a lot of people, and this is who we're talking to in our second harvest conversations. These are people who are high achievers, very good at having a goal, going out, making it happen, being in control of the situation, right? And developing these sort of like type A qualities. And I think which serves us very well, right? Like these qualities have helped us build the lives that we have built. But at a certain point, it requires you to give up a little bit of that control. In order to make that change, you have to be a little bit uncomfortable with the unknown. You got to take that leap. I have this, and it's probably because I have a video of it that I have on Instagram. Richard actually took it from the water when we were in Bermuda. And it was me. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling when you're standing on the edge of like a rock or a cliff and you're going to dive into the open water. And like that, like few seconds before you take the jump, you're like, what am I doing?
It's going to be cold. It might be cold.
Like, yeah, exactly. It's going to be cold. Like, hopefully there's not a rock that's, hopefully this isn't too shallow. But you're like, okay, screw it. I'm just going to do it. And you jump in, right? Like that feeling I felt a bunch of times during the years. Actually, I still feel it often, but like I started feeling it a lot more commonly starting in 2021, where it's just like, this is unknown to me. This is scary as hell, but I'm just going to do it. And it was almost like a little bit of like, we talk about like an experimental mindset, right? Of like, you're never going to feel fully ready to make a lot of these changes. Like if you're sitting around waiting for like, I want to make these changes, but it's going to happen when this, and this happens. Like you're never going to get to that point. At a certain point, you just have to be like, screw it. Let's just try. And if it doesn't work out, well, then we'll pivot.
One thing that helped us was, for those of you who are listening, don't know me, I used to run a design company. We used to build products. So design was very much part of my world. And design has a very open-minded approach to problems, right? You bring whatever it is, a business problem, a product problem, a market problem, and you try and figure out how you can get to an answer. And there's a process by that. And I've been doing that for so many years that this felt like that we could apply similar principles, similar ideas to that. And one of the key ideas around taking a product to market is this idea of an MVP, a prototype, an experiment that you can just put out into the market and say, is there fit? Is this idea that we have going to be able to be the thing that allows us to do the things we can? And you normally have a smallish cohort where you take a relatively small version of that idea and you put it into the market. We have packaged that in the context of Second Harvest as what we call a thin slice experiment. And this takes the person from that moment of like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, or this is too scary, or I'm not familiar with this, or I've got to do more research, or whatever their procrastination technique might be, to, oh, I can formulate a very small experiment that I can run in the next 24.
It's like how Devin cut her food up to eat before she had the awakening.
Exactly. Thin slice food. Yeah.
Connecting the dots there.
Keep going, Richard. Sorry.
And the idea there is, what could you do in the next 24 hours or 48 hours or 72 hours that would allow you to get a little closer to the evidence that you're seeking, the confidence that you're seeking, maybe the answer to your question. So we encourage everybody to live their questions. Instead of going out and saying, well, I need an answer and it's got to be perfect and it's got to be something that'll generate all the answers and confidence that I need for the next 10 years, rather go out and say, what can I go out and do in the next 24 hours that'll give me a partial answer, which little piece of evidence that I can build on. And that is a momentum creating trick, right? It's just a Trojan horse for you to get a little closer to where you want to go without it feeling like this big monstrous thing. Because when we talk to people about change, they're like, well, I don't know, like, am I going to have to update my LinkedIn profile? And then, everybody's going to find out that I'm different.
That's the number one feedback.
Actually,
like my fucking LinkedIn profile. I got to do it.
Because it's like automatically updates everybody that now you're like this other thing. And most people's identity is trapped up in a title, in a role, in a status symbol. And they haven't had the opportunity to experiment with it any other way. Now, if you don't have a way to experiment with it, that can be a frightening moment, or that can be a situation that you don't want to like attend to. So you'll find ways to procrastinate. But in our case, we can say, oh, let's try this little thing. So with Second Harvest, Devon and I are constantly saying, well, what's the tiniest little thing that we could do right now to find out if that could work? And that was the genesis of the business. She just posted it on LinkedIn and said, we have this idea. Would you like to go and do this thing? People showed up, and then we said, well, that worked. Let's try it again and again and again.
So I can give you let's give some tangible examples to who's listening. So for me, it would be, hey, I'm going to run a marathon. That seems crazy. I'm going to go run 2 miles. And then you progress from there. What are some other examples that you've heard or you've done yourself?
From guests, from participants, we've actually seen quite a few. So this might mean a big career change is looming, and they're thinking, well, maybe I step away from this industry entirely. What they might start doing is a little bit of advisory work for that alternative. They might get on a board. They might do some consulting. They might do some freebie stuff. They do like some pro bono work where they just like, hey, I'm going to go and try this over here. Or I'd like to write a book, but a book seems insurmountable right now. So what I'm going to write is a LinkedIn post every morning. It's going to be 100 words.
Yeah.
And they're going to do that for 20 days. And then after 20 days, they do it for 100 days. And then they go, gee, I wrote a lot of words here. This might actually be the first 3, 4, 5 chapters of my book. So incrementally, everything can be broken down. It is possible to take big projects and turn them into small projects. They're not going to be the same, but you do also have to see them through the lens of what they are actually doing. So instead of saying, I am changing my entire identity, what you're saying is, I'm not changing my identity. I'm experimenting with the possibility of that identity change.
That's great. Devon, do you have anything else to add on that? Any other examples? I mean, you had the working out and the athletic part of it, but any other experiments other than the food thing?
We've had a lot of conversations with people who are maybe in corporate and have this hobby or passion project that in the back of their mind are like, this is what I want to like jump ship from my job and actually start this business. And I think that can be very, very scary to do when you're like, well, what goes into that? But having like an experiment could be very well like having conversations with people who are already doing it and trying to understand what that entails and hear about their journey and hear about what their day-to-day looks like. Because in some cases, some things should just be hobbies. I think there are a lot of things, especially with like small businesses where it's like things are happening behind the scenes. It's very time intensive. It's weird hours. It's all sorts of things. So like giving yourself the space to be able to do like have those conversations, or even like for me at a certain point in time, I was thinking I was going to open up the place where I worked out at Figueroa. I became so obsessed with it. It was so helpful to me. And instantly for me, it's like, if something works for me, I want to like spread the word about it. And so part of me was like, I want to open up my own Figueroa. Like, I want to do this. This is perfect. This would be great. And so what I did was I started actually like working there behind the scenes and helping and doing different things. And it was a lot of work. It would have been something that I don't think ultimately would have made me very happy if I had gone all in on it. And I think that does happen sometimes. People take that leap and they go on something versus like living it before. So
those are good examples. I mean, I had the same experience with Orange Theory, which I'm obsessed with. And I was obsessed with it because it was the first time it actually unlocked my ability to go work out 5 or 6 times a week. And I kept doing it. And it was the first time that I'd other than training for runs, it was the first time that I had something consistent, and I was like, I should do a franchise. Nope. I mean, maybe.
So what you're talking about is the disease of America, right? So
yeah,
the thing that we do is turn everything into a business. Everything has to scale. Everything has to be commercialized. And to Devon's point, some things just need to be a hobby. I mean, I lived this as well. I was like, oh my God, I'm so enthralled with my art because it's so cathartic, it's so meaningful. What if I also created a Shopify site for my art? And for several months I did sell art, and for several months I also realized I don't want to be doing that. That is a perfect hobby. It's a perfect cathartic therapeutic expression. It doesn't need to be a business. And so one of the things that we ask people is this thing that you're interested in doing, is that also the thing that's going to service the creative part of you or service the spiritual part of you? Do you need to turn your yoga practice into a yoga studio for other people? Maybe, maybe not. Do you need to turn your hobby of being a coach on your kids' pickleball team now you need to like open up a pickleball practice franchise. Maybe not. Like maybe that's where you don't have to think about that stuff, because as Devon says, every decision comes with some strings attached to it. There are considerations for your time, your money, your interests. Where is that stuff going to go if you are turning your hobby into, or as they say, turn your vacation into a vocation? The short version of your to your answer is everybody's different. And so instead of us saying, oh, here is a solution for you, you should go and be a franchise owner or a consultant, what we say to them is, let's go and interrogate that stuff. First and foremost, what are the stories you're telling yourself? Have an inventory of all the stories that are in your head because of you, because of your society, because of your culture. But there are people who come to our events and they're like, listen, I'm Indian. You don't know what it's like to have family pressure. There are like actual cultural stories. There are religious stories. There are spiritual stories. There are emotional trauma stories. And you have to interrogate them and ask, how do these continue to serve me? They have brought me to where I am. Like, for instance, I have a big chip on my shoulder about being the youngest, smallest person in high school and being voted the least likely to succeed. And so I overcompensated and made sure that everybody knew that I was going to be the kick-ass venture-backed CEO, right? I was going to show them. Well, that has run its course. It no longer is helpful to be that angry white guy with a chip on my shoulder. Now there's a version of me that says, hey, thanks for serving. That allowed me to get to where I am. It's allowed me to acquire many of the things that I'm providing to my family, but it's no longer serving me. So that story needs to be honored and respected, but it also can be put aside and said, thank you so much. There's a new version of that, or there's a story that I need to adopt that is going to be more relevant for my second chapter.
I don't think this is the wrap-up question, but it's a good segue. I find it fascinating that a lot of people in our situations, and even like David Brooks's book, Second Mountain, and the people that you have coming to these events, what's fascinating is that we are all in positions where we've had some success in what we do in our careers. And I would say that I wouldn't have had that success if I didn't function the way that I do, which is a lot of my self-worth is in my
dysfunction. Job. If you hadn't dysfunctioned the way that you do.
Right. But this is like, think about mid-20s, Richard, Devon, Kyle, or the people listening to this where they hear that and they're like, well, you spent a ton of time getting to the point where you can do things like this because you were successful. And David Brooks talks about it in the Second Mountain, right? How do we make sure that we are raising kids the right way, talking to younger people the right way, where they can change and adapt and grow and not have to follow necessarily the path that we took to get to where we are? Because I'm never going to change. I mean, I'll probably die looking at some go-to-market strategy. Like, that's just me. Like, I love what I do. I do it well.
I'm glad this is being recorded because we're going to come back to that.
maybe, yeah. Because it's probably the case, and I was raised that way, and my father's that way, right?
Yeah, but everybody says that. Everybody's like, I'm never going to have kids until they are absolutely on the other side of it.
If I'm in my 20s and I'm hearing this interview, how do you make the change in your 20s? I don't know, to be more balanced, or maybe this is hindsight and it just doesn't matter.
I don't think it matters. I think it's reasons and seasons. I think you show up in the season that is most appropriate for you. And if you're in your 20s and you have so much piss and vinegar and energy, go for it. I remember when I could work 100-hour week and party all night and get away with it. You probably remember that as well. And run marathons and do triathlons and do all the other stuff. Your body can sustain that. So whatever, it doesn't matter. But it matters more when you are also providing for the well-being and support of other small humans and a spouse, and you've got a business to run and you're responsible to your employees. Those are different stories and those are different seasons. And so the seasons, you just be very conscious of where you are in your life. If you're still my age, I'm 55, and you're behaving like a 25-year-old, I doubt that's very sustainable. I doubt that you're going to get through a week or two. You're going to burn out pretty quickly. And so you switch modalities. Like, I'm probably more productive in terms of like actual output than I was back then because there was a lot of noise in that activity. Now there's more signal, but it doesn't matter because it still produced something interesting. It still produced an outcome.
Well, and you're using AI, right, Richard?
What's that? I have no idea. I am AI.
Yeah, we all are. We all kind of are.
I'm actually on a beach in Spain right now. This is just my avatar.
Devon was my boss at OpenView, and she was my boss at a pretty pivotal moment for me, which was it was my second like true leadership role. I had moved the family to Boston. I was way out of my element. We definitely had quite a few conversations about that when I worked at OpenView. But how would you handle it if you were talking to Devon VC in 2015?
Honestly, it's what you were just talking about. Like, I don't regret any of it.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
The D1 athlete, those experiences, that was hard. That was tough. Like the recruiter out of school working at the agency and grinding on the phones and the cold calling and realizing that worked for me until 2009, and it wasn't working for me anymore. Okay, well, pivoting into OpenView and these things and this intensity and the personality that was in me with like my own version of the chip on the shoulder, again, served me so well. And in many respects was in total alignment with me and what I wanted and what I was passionate about until it wasn't. And then that's where I feel like where we enter the conversation, which is like what you're doing, if it doesn't serve you any longer, if you're feeling that like discomfort and you're aware of it, but you're scared to make the change, that's where I feel like you become dysregulated. When you're pretending to be, we talk so much about like fake it till you make it. I mean, like you, Kyle, when you're like, I joined OpenView and I was in over my skis, like I always felt that way, right? Like it's like you fake it till you make it. And that's how I think we grew so much. Scott like really set that bar high, and we grew into that space that quite frankly he allowed for us. It was hard, it was difficult, it was challenging, but we definitely grew, right? But when you get to that point where it's feeling off and you're putting on your game face and you're faking it till you make it through the day, that's when things become the issue.
Yeah. I apply an 80-20 rule to it. If you really love 80% of what you're doing on a daily basis and 20% is kind of shitty, that's fine.
Yeah, that's life, right? Exactly. Like we're not preaching that life has to be perfect, this, that, whatever. But if you're feeling that, and that's a good maybe like benchmark for yourself. When you know, but it's when you start suppressing that feeling and you're just like, shh, hush, hush.
Then you see it come out. You see it come out in other ways. Your health mainly. Yeah.
Yeah, your health and your relationships, those will be your two canaries in the coal mine. A really important part of this is really the macro, right? So you're not, say, 80-20 days or weeks, but months as well, and years. Like some years where it wasn't always great, but you came out on top and you had more good days than bad days on average. That's okay as well. The key thing here is for people to realize that there is no generalized or generic solution that we've ever come up with. Nobody has ever found a way that we should all live that is not unique. In other words, that is generic. It's just like we are all unique. We all have our own cadences and rhythms. What we find most in the participants who come to the retreats is they're trying to get back to that. It's not that they're broken and they need fixing. It's that they're trying to remember who they are, what their unique qualities are, their character, their genius, whatever their gift is. That has been lost in the mill of work or the mill of societal structures and institutional work. But at some point, when they were 5 or 6, they knew what they wanted to be. They had a voice, they had an artist, they had something that they wanted to be. And that's been put aside for a while. Now they're returning back to it and they're saying, what does that look like in the context of being a 45 or 50-year-old? What does that mean to be a gifted artist, a gifted creator? For you, one of the things that you find yourself doing, so you're a CMO, you're a communicator, you're a storyteller. Storytelling can have many, many, many forms. You might find that you say, one of the stories that you told us is that you think you'll be doing this. You'll be looking at go-to-market plans for the rest of your life. That may be true, but there's probably a version of you that says, I would like to put those skills and that capable version of me to work on a documentary or a book or some other storytelling format, modality. That will emerge from you. You will find that that voice can't be silenced at some point. Once you get over I have to provide for my family and I have to have status and all that kind of stuff, you'll go, that little voice is starting to get a little louder every day and I want to find out. And it'll be context specific. So if you had been born 100 years ago, it would have been contextually specific to that era. Now it might be AI driven. Maybe you're like, shit, you know what? I want to build an AI driven thing. I want to create this solution using the technology or the tools of today. It'll be a voice that you've already heard. It'll be a remembering of the voice. It won't be, oh, I didn't realize I was that. I'm 50 years old and I'm like suddenly right. It's like, no, everybody that comes goes, I've always wanted to do this. I've just forgotten that.
I think it's such a fascinating thing to think about, where we have the pandemic, which was like it was a pretty intense experience for everybody, right? I mean, it was crazy. And then you are thrown 4 or 5 years later, you're thrown into this world where the way that we work is going to change dramatically, and already is. Like, the three of us, I think we all agree that we're not going to see this type of change in the way people work probably in our lifetime, depending on how fast AI evolves and it turns into some demon thing. I have no idea. Who knows? But let's hope not. But I think that it's a very interesting dilemma that we are in at our age, where we have kids that we want to raise to never lose that creative childlike nature. And we have technology that is forcing people to reconsider what they do because they don't have the choice. That's only going to get more pronounced as the technology gets better, as robotics get better, and we're going to go through another industrial revolution, because we are. Like, it's only a matter of time. And I think it's important for people to realize that and go back to the version of them that they loved and try to rediscover what their passions are if it's not where they're currently sitting, because now's the time to do it. And everybody's fearful of it to begin with.
So if you're listening to this and you're going, oh, that's nice of you to say that, or it's cool that you think I should go and reinvent myself or rediscover myself, where the hell is the practicality in that?
Yeah.
There's actually 3 things you can do. One is you can think like a human that a machine can't do. That means this kind of synesthetic thinking of bringing different domains, cross-functional things together. Machines really, really struggle with this shit. A good joke, for example, is impossible for AI to tell, because for a good joke to happen, I need to know all of your context, all of my context, the context of the joke, the timing of the joke, all that kind of stuff. That is a very human quality. So good storytelling, good thinking across domains is the first thing you can do. The second thing you can do is you can lean into the things that make us human: the compassion, the empathy, the feelings, the emotions, the vulnerability. That stuff as a source or a fountainhead for the storytelling, for the thinking, is also really important. And the more we know about biology, the more we realize that stuff's fundamental. That's actually the thinking, the cognitive thinking is emergent from the emotional stuff. And then the final thing is the physical stuff, how you can connect the dots on that. We can be physically together. We can create things, we can craft things, we can make things with our hands. We can make music, we can make art, we can do all these wonderful things that is incredibly difficult to replicate in the same way, in the mistake-driven way that we do. Take those 3 things, you combine those 3 things into some form like we've done with Second Harvest. It is a container for emotional, physical, and meaningful conversations to happen in some way, in some form. We don't determine that, we just like make the container. Everybody's got the capability of doing that. That combination of things, that'll give us another, I don't know how long, several decades before we fuck that up as well.
Devon, is there anything you want to add before I give the last question to that?
I think when it's, when we're thinking about our kids and making sure they're set up for success, obviously, like I spend a lot of time thinking about this. I've got 3 kids and
You got is the pop star emerging?
Yeah, the pop star, exactly. Well, I think what I'm excited about, and I think a lot of people are out there who are like are fearful of like, what does the world look like for our kids, and are there going to be any jobs, and like what's going to happen with the economy? I'm actually freaking pumped for my kids.
Yeah, I am too.
They're extroverts. They love people. They've got pretty good emotional intelligence. They like to tell jokes. They like to perform like pop stars. And my youngest Bowen, for anyone who doesn't know, it's like, I think he's David Bowie and reincarnate here. So I'm like, amazing. This is great because this ain't going away. That need for connection and emotional intelligence, like we need more. We're going to need more of that. So I'm excited for them. And another thing is, yes, to your point, change is happening and it's happening at a rapid scale. And I think exposing our kids, Like if you're in the midst of, if you're doing something and you want to make a change and you're scared to make that change, what an amazing example to be for your kids, to show them that you can pivot, you can adapt, and everything actually works out just fine and great, in fact. And to be that for your kid, because they're going to no doubt have a shit ton of change in their life. So if you can be the example for them now and show, even if it's in the small ways, show that you can be resilient and you can change, like what a gift for your children.
Love it. All right. So if people are interested, I mean, we could talk about this for 3 hours, but if people are interested to talk more with the two of you in a setting like in Massachusetts, maybe, or in, where was the other place? Where are you going
We
soon?
got Spain next month. So we got Spain in April.
All right. Where do they go to like learn more about it?
You can go to secondharvest.co.
What's like the one piece of advice that you would give people as they go look at it, as they consider it? Like I'm going to, of course. Maybe you can just give the advice to me.
For check out the website. It's so funny. Like some people go onto the site and they're like, I feel like your site was written for me. I'm like, bam, cool. Let's talk. So first things first, you know, retreats are great for some people. They're not for everyone. Maybe now's not the right time.
Well, but a thin slice could be, if it speaks to you, you need to email them.
So two things, connect with us. Happy to chat. This is what Richard and I live for, having conversations with interesting people and helping make connections and getting you introduced to other people. You don't have to come to a retreat for that, right? Maybe it is time for a retreat. You're ready to go. Let's have a conversation. Those slots are definitely filling up for Girona and Rhode Island. We've got a couple spots left for each. But another thin slice experiment could also be for you. Check out the summit that we're hosting in May 21st in Lincoln, Mass at the De Cordova Art and Sculpture Park. Absolutely beautiful setting. It's going to be a slightly larger group. We're going to replicate some of those smaller group conversations that we would have as a retreat there. The people who have signed up so far, we've got over 80 signed up so far. These are ballers. They're amazing people are on the list. So come, give it a try, get a sense for the vibe, meet some interesting people, be out in nature, and maybe that can be just your experiment to understand what this is all about.
It's good. Richard, anything else to add?
I just want to point out that having Devon as a partner on this has been the best part of the whole thing. And when you are about to explore any kind of change, whatever that might be, the people that you do it with, the relationships you have as you emerge from wherever you are to wherever you're going, they are the most important relationships you'll ever have, because in a way it's you, right? It's kind of like this mirror of your change. You attract the people in your life that you need to see. You will continue to attract people in your life that will teach you the lessons. Devon showed up in my life. I'm like, oh my God, I've got so much to learn. This is a person who is on a rocket ship of change. I need to be part of this. And it goes beyond just having a partner in business and in life. It goes to you, to your own experience. Like, who are you in relationship to yourself?
Yeah.
Do you treat yourself in the same way that you would treat somebody else? Do you expect to be treated in the way that you are treating that other person? That's really enlightenment, because you can go off into the mountains and you can hide away as a hermit and become enlightened. That is possible. You know, lots of people who do that. The moment you're back in relationship with people, you will find that you're not enlightened anymore. The moment you interact with a toddler, you will find you're not enlightened anymore. Just having a hard conversation at work, you will find that all of the things that you've awakened to no longer are meaningful, that there's still work to be done. I just want to say, having Devon in my life has been the greatest transformation. And I think that that's part of what we do at Second Harvest is we bring people into relationship with themselves and others who are experiencing similar kinds of change. That in of itself should be enough. If you want to come to a retreat for nothing else except to meet yourself, to come home to yourself through relationship, through that partnership, that is enough. That is sufficient. You don't need to walk away with anything else. You don't even do any other work. Just come for that, and that is sufficient.
I think that the one note is that you don't have to do it alone. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go to Second Harvest. We would recommend you go, but you don't have to do these things alone. There's always somebody there, or there should be, or if you haven't found anybody, you can search for them and it usually will show up. But I think that you experiment with your comfort level with thin slices, which I will never forget. And that comfort level gives you confidence to approach the things that are uncomfortable. And the things that are uncomfortable will really drive true change. in what you're doing. And the reality is that you don't have to do it alone, which I don't think a lot of people, I would argue probably the majority of the people think they have to do it alone.
We're very much an individualistic society. We're also not really good at talking about our feelings and our vulnerabilities, especially if you're a leader. I mean, I say this a million times. Nobody in my peer group, in my C-level peer group, is going to get a pity party thrown for them because they are like lonely at the top. Like you're like, oh my God, I'm a CEO. I'm so lonely. Nobody gives a shit. But it's true. If you are a C-level executive, you are not friends with the people you used to work with like you used to be. You are also not coming home and saying, hey, spouse, I would like to talk to about work again. And they'll be like, no, thanks. I've heard enough of your bullshit stories. So suddenly you're like isolated. You're like, I don't have friends to talk to about the things that I'm going through. And I'm kind of lonely and I'm getting paid a lot of money. So nobody should feel sorry for me. But I'm kind of an obstacle to my own growth and therefore the growth of others. So that's part of it. It's just like, if we want our country, if we want our society to be a better place, it has to start with treating our leaders like people, like human beings. They are not robots. They are not special. They are just like us. They're making the same shitty mistakes. They're making the same, they're living in the same concerns and having the same sleepless nights about the same stuff. Let's help them so that we can all be better off, instead of saying, oh, no, there's somebody earning a lot of money. That must be really nice. That's not always the case.
We'll end on this. Do you think Trump has sleepless nights?
I don't know if he's human, though. I think there's assumption there.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not. I mean, we're not going to get into politics on this show, but that's definitely one where I was like, I don't know if I agree with that one in particular, Richard. Okay, so thank you both. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. Go to secondharvest.co. Where else can they go to find out any information about you? LinkedIn, Second Harvest?
We're on the gram. We're on LinkedIn. Yeah.
We spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
Thanks for chatting, Richard and Devon. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, Kyle.
That's it for this episode. If you want to keep learning, make sure you subscribe and share. And you can also sign up for my newsletter, Revenue Diaries, through the link in the show notes. This podcast is produced in partnership with Share Your Genius. If you're looking for a full-service production partner who are experts, and believe me, they are, in content strategy, talk to Rachel at Share Your Genius and tell her I sent you. This is also brought to you by Docebo. If your organization is serious about AI-powered learning and building a workforce that can actually keep up with all the changes happening, check us out at docebo.com, docebo.com.